I've had a lot of conversations recently with friends, and if I'm being real, most, not all, of my friends in Texas are conservative. When I lived in New York for 15 years, most, but not all, of my friends were progressive. But almost everybody, whether or not they consider themselves a progressive or a conservative, strives from some idea of moderation. They talk about the extremes, the extreme right, the extreme left. And I think instead of being able to define their own thoughts, what they're capable of doing is define what is not their thought. It's always easier for people to say what they're not than to say what they are. Because what you are is a blank slate. You're confronted with an open-ended question. You're not provided a multiple choice. It's not a true or false. Now, American politics throughout its history has offered you true or false. They've offered you a bipolar spectrum of political ideologies in a straight line from left to right. And most people would see that spectrum and choose their quote-unquote team and define themselves somewhere short of the pole, of the far left or the far right. And in that, I think you hear people begin to say things like, can't we just find somebody moderate? Can't we just find somebody somewhat center? Someone center right, someone center left, someone common sense. And when I've had these conversations recently with my friends in Dallas who all would self-describe as conservative, I feel at times like they're speaking a different language. I almost feel like I'm incapable of participating in the conversation because I don't know what any of the terms mean anymore. My entire framework, not just for politics, but for life, has been somewhat scrambled over the past, I'd say, decade. I certainly would have been someone throughout my 20s and 30s who would have seen myself on that political spectrum. I would have said, here is, for example, my ideology, and it would have been driven by my view of the Constitution, and it would have been driven by what I think is a fidelity to logic and objective truth. But what has happened over the last 8 to 10 years is any coherence in that spectrum, I feel like was absolutely put into a blender. Look, at this point, the left is defined by issues such as a full embrace of censorship, government backdoor, private corporation, government mandated censorship, the open rejection of debate, and the tar and feathering of disagreement as misinformation. The left is far now removed from any fidelity to free speech. The left is for open borders, and the left is for a liberalization when it comes to laws on crime. But at the same time, the left is now much more active globally, militarily, and seeing apparently now America as the defender of global democracy. On the other hand, the right also shares, much of the right, that same globalist protector of democracy ideology. So how are they polar opposites? Far right 15 years ago would have been defined by George W. Bush launching wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And far left would have defined itself in that true or false as other, dovish, skeptical of foreign military involvement. Now they're the same. There is no doubt that, there are some on the right, as we've, I think, learned from and in some cases leaned into populism, who have veered towards pandering, telling you what you want to hear. And so I don't know anymore, how you define yourself as a centrist. I don't know anymore how you could possibly stake out a position that could be reasonably described as moderate. There are people throughout time who said it's not a polar line, it's not linear, it's more circular. And at the top, communism and fascism meet and are very similar. And I think there's something to that. But I still don't think the way that we talk to each other culturally, the issues that are presented to us, I don't know where the lack of ability to define a man and a woman fits within any political spectrum. And I feel like we've been put into a blender where there is no such thing as moderate. And I can't launch into that spiel when I tell someone, well, that's why I don't see much difference between Nikki Haley and Joe Biden. It's why I can't have a clean conversation about why Donald Trump doesn't represent in my mind anything beyond stylistically far right. Like, what does that mean? What is far right? Trade fairness instead of free trade? Skepticism towards military involvement globally? Are these now staked out positions of what someone would be considered far right? Explain to me anymore, the context. And the truth is, there never was a context. It was all wrapping paper designed to present us with, I think, truly a false either or discussion. True or false, A or B. It was never real. It always just made it easy so that we could define what we are not and never have to confront what we are. I know this. Here's what I am. I believe in the maximization of freedom. I believe in a culture that is grounded in a moral and historically and standing the test of tradition and time, Judeo-Christian ethic. I believe in the United States is a risk-tolerant nation built on frontiersmen and entrepreneurs. And I believe that when we set our hierarchy of priorities, we should always start with what serves America first. Now, you define that. You tell me what that's not. You tell me how that fits on that spectrum. And I guess then I'll be able to tell you what I am. I'm not left. Am I right? I'm not moderate. Am I America first? And I don't think I'm alone in this frustration. I don't think I'm alone in seeing the world isn't and probably never was the way it has been presented in culture and in politics in America.